What's going on, guys? Welcome back, and today I just wanted to discuss some of my theories for some of the upcoming and ongoing Star Wars content. We have the Book of Boba Fett still currently in the process of airing on Disney+, and later on this year we have Kenobi, Andor, and The Bad Batch Season 2 coming out, as well as the Ahsoka series coming out sometime next year. I don't have a lot to say about Kenobi, Andor, or The Bad Batch. We'll just wait and see how those turn out, but I do have some theories on the upcoming Ahsoka show, as well as the Book of Boba Fett, which is still currently airing. Starting with the Book of Boba Fett, the previous episode of which I did not talk about, but I really liked it. I thought it was even better than the first one, and I'm really loving the way the show is turning out so far. I love that it's actually taking on the role of being more of a character study for Boba Fett, rather than being a more action-oriented show. There is action within it, but if you look back at The Mandalorian Season 1's introduction, the first few episodes were very kind of action-oriented because The Mandalorian as a character was very ambiguous, but as I've stated previously, I feel like Boba Fett has a lot of potential to be explored as a character, and I'm glad they're tapping into that potential. But the previous episode also had a lot of hints that I feel may lead into plot lines featured later in the season. One such example being the introduction of Black Christensen or something. I may be incorrect in my pronunciation of that, but he's basically this black Wookiee who shows up, and it's implied that he and Boba have a history. When I did some digging, I found out that he's actually from some comic books. I never read those. I don't really read comic books. I just read books like novels, but it seems as though that character does have a history with Boba Fett, and that could lead to some sort of conflict going on there. But more importantly, the Pikes were featured in that episode as Boba Fett and his Tusken Raider companions attempted to stop the Pikes kind of shipping some spice on this train-type vehicle, and Boba Fett does stop the train and kind of threatens them, but sends them on their way with a Tusken escort. But I feel like the Pikes' presence in that episode could be teasing or hinting at a conflict between Crimson Dawn and Boba Fett's newly acquired Hutt clan. If I'm remembering correctly, back in the Clone Wars, when Darth Maul was forming the Shadow Collective, the Pike's Black Sun and the Hutts did join him in his conquest, but at the end of the Clone Wars, when the Empire rose, the Shadow Collective splintered and they all broke off. But when it was reformed into Crimson Dawn, I believe the Pikes and Black Sun did return, but the Hutts did not. And in a recent comic issue, the character Kira from Solo: A Star Wars Story returned, and I believe it was explained that in between the events of The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, she had taken over control of Crimson Dawn from the former leader being Darth Maul, who had died in Star Wars Rebels. I believe it was also explained that she had stolen away the carbonite-frozen body of Han Solo from Boba Fett temporarily before Boba was able to reclaim him, and thus we see him at the beginning of Return of the Jedi. For both those reasons, I believe there is a high likelihood we will see the return of Crimson Dawn in the Book of Boba Fett, led by Kira herself, because of the fact that they both have a personal history with each other, considering the fact that she stole away Han Solo from him in between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and because of the fact that the Hutt clan, which Boba Fett has now taken over command of, splintered off from the Shadow Collective during the Clone Wars, and there may still be some bad blood between them. I believe that Crimson Dawn did hire the assassins who were tasked to hunt down and kill Boba Fett in the first episode, as to the fact that we still do not know the identity of who hired those assassins to go after Boba Fett. And in the second episode of the Book of Boba Fett does confront the Pikes and tells them to return to their syndicate, which I believe is Crimson Dawn. And because of the fact that they do have a little bit of a rocky relationship, I think there is a high likelihood we will see a conflict between Boba Fett's new kind of criminal empire, which I believe was the Hutt clan at one point in time, and Crimson Dawn. Now moving on to my theories for the Ahsoka show, which don't actually revolve around Ahsoka's character herself. I feel we have a pretty good idea as to where the general plot is going for her. She and Sabine headed off at the end of Rebels to search for Ezra, who launched himself off into the unknown regions somewhere with Thrawn at the end of Rebels. We do see her confronting the Magistrate in The Mandalorian Season 2 about where Thrawn is at this point in time. But I believe it has been confirmed, or perhaps rumored castings have been floating around, that Nina Masood will be playing Ezra Bridger and Lars Mikkelsen will be returning as Grand Admiral Thrawn. So my main theory does revolve around that, Thrawn and Ezra and what they've been up to. Now, if you have not read the Thrawn books, or at least the canon Thrawn books, then I guess this is a bit of a spoiler, but basically, in the Unknown Regions, in the Chiss Ascendancy, the Chiss use young children known as Skywalkers who are Force-sensitive and can see into the future by a couple seconds to avoid debris while traveling through hyperspace, because they don't have hyperspace engines or mapping systems like ships do in lesser space, as it is regarded by the Chiss Ascendancy. I believe that, considering Ezra's kind of loyalty to his people, his undying loyalty to Lothal and his people there, he gave up everything to protect them, considering the fact that Thrawn's entire motivation for joining the Empire was to protect his people and the Chiss Ascendancy, if once they had launched themselves off into hyperspace somewhere, Thrawn had just kind of discussed with Ezra his motivations for being a part of the Empire, perhaps apologizing for the extreme lengths he had to go to at the end of Rebels and explaining that he only did it to protect his people, Ezra may actually be able to empathize with Thrawn and understand him on some level, and perhaps Thrawn will convince him to help him travel throughout hyperspace by using the Force, or as they call it in the Chiss Ascendancy, third sight. I feel like that would be a really interesting plot development, because Thrawn and Ezra as characters do have a lot more in common than I feel some people realize, and if Thrawn really did just kind of lay everything out on the table in regards to what his motivations were for joining the Empire, Ezra may realize that he and Thrawn are more similar than he first thought, and they perhaps have been working together. I feel like that would be a much more interesting direction to take with the story than just having it be something like Thrawn kidnapped Ezra and is forcing him to travel through hyperspace. If instead they were able to come to some sort of agreement, I feel that would be way more interesting, because if they just turn Thrawn into like a one-dimensional villain and he's like, haha, I've trapped Ezra and I'm forcing him to travel through hyperspace, then it'll be pretty bad, because that's not who Thrawn's character is. Even if he's simply using that empathy and trying to draw that out of Ezra to just manipulate him into helping him, that isn't entirely out of character, because Thrawn has said in the past, rather sadly, that he doesn't see people truly as people and just as assets. So I feel like that would be kind of a really interesting direction to take with the story, and I hope that is the direction they go in. Perhaps he does use Ezra to take him out into the Chiss Ascendancy somehow, and they're able to meet up with Eli Vanto and Admiral Ar'alani, who are still allies of Thrawn. Of course, at the end of the recent Thrawn Ascendancy Lesser Evil, we do see that he was exiled from the Chiss Ascendancy, and we know that from the Imperial Thrawn trilogy. But I believe that Eli Vanto and Ar'alani are still close allies of Thrawn, and they could perhaps get them to help him in his journey of trying to destroy the Grisks. I feel if Thrawn is the main antagonist of the Ahsoka show, that would be really lame, because he's not a villain. I feel if they do find Thrawn, it should be revealed that he and Ezra have been working together for all of these years, and that Thrawn did explain to Ezra that the true threat is in fact the Grisks, because we know from the end of Thrawn Treason that the Grisks were actually using hyperspace lanes rather close to the Imperial center of commerce within kind of lesser space. So I feel like that would be an interesting direction to take with the story. I hope that the Grisks actually end up being the ultimate threat and not just Thrawn, because that would just really kind of piss me off, because Thrawn is a much more layered character than that. But that's pretty much it for my theories for Ahsoka. I believe that Ezra and Thrawn may come to some sort of agreement and understanding between the two of them, and they may travel the unknown regions together, going through hyperspace with Ezra using the Force, or as Thrawn knows it as, third sight. With all that said, that's pretty much it for my theories for the upcoming and ongoing Star Wars shows. You guys please let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. Do you have your own theories for both of these shows, or perhaps even some of the shows that I did not discuss in this video? Once we learn more about these different shows, I may make more videos theorizing on what we could expect from them. But for now, that's all I've got to say. So once again, you guys please let me know all your thoughts and theories down in the comments below. And of course, as always, I hope you guys have a great day. Take care. Bye.